once again this side Priyanka Mehta. My today's video is again in continuation with my previous one, which was on input-output subsystems. So in my previous video I have already discussed about the peripheral devices concepts, their types, and I have also did a brief discussion on input-output interfaces. Now today in this video I'll be discussing in detail the three different modes of data transfer, that is programmed I/O, interrupt initiated I/O, and last is direct memory access. So these three data transfer modes will be discussing in detail. Also, I'll be addressing few drawbacks or benefits associated with each of these data transfer modes. So let's start with this. So students, today we need to understand that how data is transferred between the central processing system and the peripheral devices. So for that we'll be discussing three different modes of data transfer, and we're also going to see that what are the drawbacks associated with each of these data transfer modes. So let us first understand that what actually this data transfer means. So by data transfer we means that there are two communicating entities such that both the communicating entities or units have proper connection, and at the time of data communication or data transfer the receiving unit is not at all busy. Alright, so basically, we can classify the data transfer into two broad categories. So, a data transfer can take place either in a synchronous manner or it can take place in an asynchronous manner. So, let us understand that what it is. Now, when both the transmitting as well as receiving units, they use a common clock between them such that whatever data is transferred between them will occur simultaneously during the occurrence of a clock pulse. So such kind of data transfer is usually classified as synchronous process. So in this picture you can see that two persons are having communication through a telephone, which is obviously a synchronous in nature. Next is asynchronous data transfer. Now, how it is different from the previous one. Now here in this case, when both the transmitting as well as receiving units are independent of each other such that each of the unit have their own private clock, then such kind of data transfer is usually termed as asynchronous data transfer. So we can also say that these two independent units, they require the control signals to be transmitted between them to indicate the time at which the data is being transmitted. Like for example, here two persons are communicating with each other through emails. All right, so every individual person have their own private clock and they can communicate with each other by sending some control signals between them. All right, so this was about the classification of data transfer. Now let's focus on our today's area, that is the modes of data transfer. Now the data transfer between the CPU and I/O devices, it can be handled in a variety of modes. While there are some of the modes which use CPU as an intermediate path, whereas there are some other modes in which the data can be directly communicated to the memory unit. So there are three possible modes. First one is programmed I/O. Second one is interrupt initiated I/O, and the third one is direct memory access. So let us understand the very first mode, that is programmed I/O. Well, this is a method where the data is going to be transferred between the CPU and a peripheral. So let's be very much clear that here the two communicating entities are, one is CPU, which is residing inside your computer system, and at the other end we have a peripheral device which is residing outside your computer system. Fine. Now in this particular mode, the CPU is usually executes a program to initiate a data transfer by simply issuing a command to the I/O device. Now this command could be either to sense an I/O device status, or to send a read-write command, or to simply transfer the data. So basically your CPU is going to execute a program and then later on it is going to issue a command to the I/O device. So let's see how this entire data transfer takes place between the IO device and CPU. Well, here the CPU executes a program, and on encountering an instruction which is related to IO operation, it executes the instruction by issuing an IO command. Fine. So initially your CPU is going to execute a program, and the moment it encounters an instruction which is related to your IO operation, it will start executing that instruction by issuing an IO command to the IO device. Now basically this IO command contains the address of the desired IO device, and where each IO device is given a unique address. So basically the IO command which is sent by CPU to the devices connected to it will contain the special address of the IO device, and we are assuming that each IO device is given a unique address. All right. Now we all know that the interface unit is associated with each of the IO device. So basically this interface unit is going to interpret the address lines in order to determine if the command is for itself, or in order to determine that whether that command is for its own IO device or not. So during the data transfer between IO device to CPU, the IO device transfers some bytes of data one at a time as they are available on the IO bus and enables its data valid line. Fine. The interface unit start accepting the bytes of data into its data registers, and later it enables its data accepted line. So the interface simultaneously also sets the flag bit in the status register. The interface units then disables its data accepted line, and hence the IO device will also disable its data valid line. Now the CPU on the other hand, it has to periodically check the status register of the IO interface. Just in case if the flag is set, then the CPU reads the data from the data register and writes it into the memory. All right. So this is how your programmed IO mode works, but there is one drawback associated with this particular mode, which is it is a very time consuming process, as a lot of CPU time is already wasted in keeping an eye on the IO devices until the IO device indicates that it is ready for data transfer. So a lot of amount of time is already wasted for a CPU because it has to keep an eye on all the IO devices and see when a particular IO device is ready for the data transfer. Thus, the CPU stays in a program loop. So initially I said that your CPU is already executing a program, and the moment it encounters a particular IO instruction, it will start executing that IO instruction. So it has to be in a program loop for a long period of time, which makes CPU busy needlessly. So definitely this particular mode is very time consuming process because it is keeping your CPU busy most of the time. So let's switch to the next particular mode, that is interrupt initiated mode. So the drawback which I have addressed in the previous mode, it can be very well avoided by using an interrupt driven method for a data transfer. So somehow this particular mode has overcome the problem which was addressed in the previous one. So in this particular mode, the interface issue an interrupt request signal to the CPU whenever the data is available from your IO device. So now the point is that the CPU need not to continuously or periodically monitor the status register in an interface unit. Rather, here the interface unit is now responsible to issue an interrupt request signal to the CPU the moment the data is available from an IO device. Now, in the meantime, the CPU can now proceed with the execution of some other program, whereas the interface keeps the monitoring of the IO device. So somehow the CPU is freed from its regular monitoring of IO device, and now it can proceed with the execution of some other program. Now, whenever the interface is determined that the IO device is ready for data transfer, it is going to initiate or it is going to send an interrupt request signal to the CPU. Now, upon detecting an external interrupt request, the CPU is going to suspend its execution of current program. It will branch to the service program to process the IO transfer, and then later on it is going to again resume back to that program which it was executing earlier. So this is how this entire mode works. The only difference is that here the CPU need not to monitor continuously the status register in an interface unit. Rather, the interface unit is now responsible to send an interrupt request signal to the CPU whenever the data is ready to be transferred from an IO device. However, with this particular mode also, we have a drawback associated with it. It is still consumes a lot of CPU time, as the CPU is still tied up in managing the IO transfer by executing a number of instructions for each IO transfer. So here also your CPU is somehow participating in this data transfer process. It is not entirely free, and hence we say that it is again consuming some of the time of your CPU. Also, let us assume that if there are many IO devices and each of the IO device issues an interrupt to the CPU, in that particular situation, the CPU have to suspend its current execution, and now it is bound to attend an IO device based on some priority. So again, it's bit a time consuming job for your processor. So let's switch to a better technique of data transfer, which is direct memory access. So in this particular mode, it allows an input output device to send or receive directly from or to a main memory by bypassing the CPU just to speed up the memory operation. So the only difference here is that in the previous two methods, we saw the involvement of CPU in the data transfer. But here in this case, as from the name itself says that it is a direct memory access. It means we are no longer involving CPU here, but we are allowing the input output devices to either send or receive data directly to or from the main memory. Fine. Now the unit which is responsible to control the activity of accessing the memory directly is called as a DMO controller or DMAC. Now with DMA, the CPU can now execute other tasks while data transfer is being performed between the DMA and IO device. So in short, you can say that the job of CPU has been now taken by this DMA or DMA controller. Now, direct memory access is a very effective mode of transferring large data blocks. So in my previous two techniques, they are not suitable for transferring the large data blocks. But yes, if you are concerned with transmitting large data blocks, definitely direct memory access is the perfect choice for that. So here you can see a diagrammatic representation where you can see a DMA controller, which is a hardware unit, and it allows the IO devices to directly access the memory without the involvement or participation of the processor. All right, so let us understand how this entire mode works. Now, whenever an IO device wants to transfer data to or from memory, it is going to send a DMA request, as here it is denoted by DRQ. A DMA request DRQ will be sent from the IO device to the DMA controller. All right. Now, DMA controller is going to accept this DRQ request, and now it is going to ask the CPU to hold just for few clock cycles by sending it the hold request, that is HLD. So this HLD request will be sent by the DMA controller to the CPU. Now, later, CPU on receiving this HLD request from DMA controller will now give up the bus and send the hold acknowledgement to the DMA controller, which is denoted by HLDA. So this hold acknowledgement request will be again sent by processor to the DMA controller. Now, after receiving the hold acknowledgement from the processor, DMA controller now acknowledges the IO device by sending a signal DACK, that is device acknowledgement, that the data transfer can now be performed, and the DMA controller now takes the charge of the system bus, and now it is going to transfer the data to or from memory. Now, when the data transfer is accomplished or it is completely done, the DMA is going to raise an interrupt to let the CPU know that the task of data transfer is finished now, and now the CPU can now take the control over the entire system bus again. Fine. Now here this DMA controller can either be a separate unit shared by various IO devices, or it can also be made a part of the IO device interface. All right. So I hope my entire process is clear to you, and as you have seen that here the processor is not directly participating in the data transfer. The DMA controller comes in between, and now it is taking a key role to transfer the data between the IO device and memory directly. So this is what I have discussed in detail. And the major advantage of DMA mode is that it can transfer the data without the involvement of the processor. So as you have seen that we are not seeing the processor coming in between, but the entire data transfer is being efficiently managed by the DMA. And this somehow has speed up the entire read-write task. So definitely DMA or DMA mode is suitable for all those data transfer which involves large bulk of data transfer. Thank you so much students for watching this video. Again, if you have any doubts or queries related to this, you can simply write your questions in the below mentioned comment section. Also, please like my video and share it with your batchmates or classmates, and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much. Bye-bye and have a nice day.